Hi everyone, happy Wednesday, July 15th. My name is Karen Bachman Toole and I am here at Bachman's on Lyndale, and the weather is absolutely gorgeous today. So it's a great day to get out into your garden, and you might notice something that is kind of a nuisance. Today we're going to be talking about Japanese beetles. These hungry pests can leave plants with tattered foliage and flowers, plus the larvae can damage lawns. So today we're going to talk about how to keep these bugs under control, because they have been spotted. I've spotted them in my own garden, and we've been hearing reports from other customers that they're starting to see them as well. So a few quick facts about Japanese beetles. They are indeed an invasive species, and they feed on the leaves and flowers of fruit of more than 300 species of plants. In most cases, Japanese beetle damage is cosmetic only, causing unsightly damage, but it will not actually harm or kill the plants. Some of the more notable plants that these beetles feast on in the Twin Cities metro area are rose bushes, grapevines, birch, linden trees, and raspberries. The list, of course, is much longer, as they seem to have a taste for everything and anything. In my own garden, they are feeding on my dahlias, cherry tree, roses, and ferns. I've never seen the ferns before, but I'm going to show you some examples of what their damage actually looks like. This is one of my ferns, and what beetles do is, Japanese beetles, they are sucking out the sugar in your flowers, foliage, and fruit, and so it causes unsightly damage. And you can see here the top part of the fern is completely brown. Another indication is a lacy texture that you might see on leaves. This is actually from a rose bush, and you can see large holes, a lacy texture, and this is very indicative. On roses, unfortunately they got some of my roses as well, but this is an indication of Japanese beetle damage on roses, and this whole dahlia went away before I could actually catch them. In terms of the Japanese beetle grub, they live in the soil and cause destructive damage by eating the roots of many plants, including turf grasses. But right now we're seeing those adult Japanese beetles emerge and cause issues. So a little bit of history of Japanese beetles. They were first discovered here in Minnesota in 1968. And by 2001, they occurred in much higher numbers and in many more places. While the numbers of Japanese beetles fluctuate in our state from year to year, there is no doubt that they are more than a nuisance. So right now we're seeing those adult beetles show up in gardens and treating our prized blooms and foliage like a smorgasbord. So before you go to battle with Japanese beetles, make sure you know what they look like. An adult Japanese beetle is approximately 1/3 to a 1/2 inch long, and they have a metallic green head and thorax with copperish wings with white on their sides. They're actually really beautiful insects, but they do a lot of damage. So usually us Minnesotans want to start watching for these beetles in June and July and continue looking for them into August, as they are most actively feeding during this time, and they also feed early in the morning and late evening. They also tend to be most active when temperatures are over 85 degrees and it's humid. So the weather that we have been experiencing lately has been incredibly conducive for these pests to invade our gardens. Japanese beetles also release chemicals known as pheromones into the air to attract their friends and more beetles. So if you see a few bugs around, it probably won't be long before the rest join them. So that's why quick action is needed to get rid of them and to help the problem from getting out of control. So today we're going to talk about non-chemical and chemical options for managing Japanese beetle adults and grubs. So method one, you can hand pick Japanese beetles. I actually found one here, and so when you hand pick, you can either pick it, otherwise these insects have a habit of dropping to the ground when disturbed. So you can even just tap it and it will drop into a bucket of soapy water, and that's where they'll drown. So that is an incredibly effective but time-consuming way of managing these pests. Another method is spraying. And spraying plants that are already infested with adult beetles. We have a couple different products and sprays for treatment. So Bonide makes a product simply called Japanese Beetle Killer. That's this one, which is a natural pyrethrin-based insecticide for use on vegetables, flowers, ornamental plants, trees, and shrubs. Another effective spray treatment is Bonide 8. And this comes in either spray or you can hook it up to your hose. And 8 insect control controls Japanese beetles, and it kills them on contact, but it also has a residual effect lasting up to a week or more. However, this treatment is not suitable for use on fruits and vegetables. It is important to note when you're using these two methods to spray early in the morning or late evening when pollinators are least active. Neem-based products are also a very good control, and they can help and be sprayed directly onto beetles, but this type of method, while more natural, needs to be reapplied quite often. And then the third option that we'll talk about is beetle traps. And the question that we get asked most about are beetle traps a good idea? And well, there is not a lot of consensus on that, but these are beetle traps, and they use pheromones and floral scents to lure the beetles in, and they're intended to draw the ones in your yard to their demise before they can start feeding on their plants. There's been quite a bit of debate on this topic over the years because of fears that the trap can actually end up making the problem worse. Research on the traps have mixed results, but generally, if the traps are set up correctly in a garden setting at least 15 feet away from any trees or plants that you're trying to protect, it can be an effective option for controlling Japanese beetles. So it is important to realize that treating Japanese beetles may be a year-long process and multiple methods may need to be used. While adult female beetles are feeding now, they will periodically leave the plants and lay eggs, usually in the turf. One beetle can lay up to 50 eggs a year, and then these eggs hatch into grubs around midsummer and begin to feed on the roots of turf grasses or other plants. So before first frost, the grubs will bury deeper into the soil and remain inactive throughout the winter. When the ground thaws in early spring, the grubs actually move up closer to the surface of the soil and begin feeding on the roots of your turf again until they begin to pupate in late spring. Then in about 2 weeks, the pupae become adult and they emerge from the ground, thus creating the cycle all over again. So this completes on average a 1-year life cycle. So multiple methods can be used. If you're treating grubs, GrubX is a great product to use, but otherwise look out in your garden today and look for any damage that we talked about, and consider the hand pick method with a bucket of soapy water, the Bonide product, Japanese Beetle Killer, Bonide 8, or neem oil. So we hope that some of your questions about Japanese beetles have been answered today. They are out and about in the Twin Cities, so keep your eye out. We have a helpful care sheet on Bachmans.com titled Japanese Beetles, and a variety of products both in-store and online. Don't forget that non-contact curbside pickup and delivery are available. Good luck on your beetle battle, and thank you, and happy gardening.